What is going on, y'all? It is the Caveman back at it again with the Cave. Every Tuesday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I take to the airwaves, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and there's a jam-packed football show ready to be had here on the Caveman's YouTube channel, Facebook, and or Twitter. This week I have a very special guest. I always bring somebody awesome on, and Dave is definitely no exception to that. Dave is going to be an exceptional guest tonight. And with that being said, we're going to bring him right in immediately. Dave, thank you for spending some time with me this week. It's going to be a very good show.
Hey man, thanks for having me. I say this every time I'm on anyone's show as a guest. It means a lot to me. I'll always try to be a guest on people's shows. It means a lot to me, and so it's an honor for me, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, man. I'm very grateful that you were able to take the time out of your week. I'm sure if you're watching my show, you definitely know who Dave is. Dave is a member slash content creator for Cover One. He's the co-host of the Air Raid Hour, the Bills guys with Judge Mathis over on Cover One. He's also a digital art designer, and all the links that you will be needing to contact either Dave, Cover One, or maybe the Air Raid guys on Twitter. It'll all be in the description below. So if you want to check him out, I don't have an artistic bone in my body. So I've seen some of your work, and it really is tremendous what you're able to do, especially digitally. I mean, I do my best to create like backgrounds and stuff, but I mean, you blow it out of the water when it comes to stuff like that.
Well, the truth of the matter is when I was starting down kind of my career path journey, I really wanted to do web design. Was like my original passion. That was like a hobby of mine back in high school. And when I went into college, the college I went to, NC State, didn't really have exactly what I was looking for on that front. So I ended up changing majors, switched over to finance. But I still had the passion for doing web design type stuff, digital art, editing. And so you'll see that, my profile on Twitter, I've got my Josh Allen, edit in there, the Avengers one, which is one of my favorite ones I've done, and some others. So, and do the graphics for the draft show we did for the Air Raid Hour and our backgrounds and all that. So it's really it's just something that's fun for me. I love doing it. So yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm sure there's probably a ton that you do that people really don't know that you do. It's just stuff you do behind the scenes, and it's a lot of effort. Like I mean, like I said, I try my best to mock up whatever I can, and it's like sometimes it can take hours. Like it's something that kind
Mhm.
of goes underappreciated. You're watching a show or something like that. It's just the background, but that background it probably took some blood, sweat, and tears depending on how much effort you put into it. So I have a lot of respect for that. It's pretty damn awesome.
Yeah, I mean, some of those edits I did, like the Stefon Diggs fire theme one I did, took me like literally. I was on my paternity leave when I just had my kid.
Mhm.
I was working on it probably like 4 to 5 hours a day for 2 straight weeks,
Jeez.
and yeah, so that's the end result of it.
Yeah, so that's absolutely need to design a Captain Caveman. Thanks, Jason. But yeah, I mean, if that pretty much speaks to the sentiment of how much effort these kinds of things take. So definitely, I'm appreciative. And if you did not know how much effort those kinds of things took, you heard it from the man himself. Um, but let's roll. Let's get the ball moving here. Now that the guest spotlight is over, we know who we're talking with tonight. Let's get into the recent events portion of the show. We're lucky enough to have some kind of news of content this week. Sometimes it's just empty, just dead end conversation with the stuff at this point of the offseason. But thankfully, we were actually spoon fed some news. Last week, this went down. Baker Mayfield traded to the Carolina Panthers for a 2024 conditional fifth round pick. As far as Baker Mayfield's career goes, how does this kind of affect his outlook? And, where do you see his future going from here?
I mean, for Baker personally, I think it's a good fit for him. He was kind of in purgatory there with the Browns ever since they kind of made the move for Deshaun Watson. Obviously, the Panthers don't give up a ton here to get him. And he goes to a team with some weapons, right? DJ Moore, Christian McCaffrey, um, in a division outside of Tampa Bay that is kind of wide open, to be honest. Atlanta is trying to figure out what they've got going on. Is it going to be Mariota this year leading that squad with Ritter, the draft pick? Like Atlanta's kind of a mess. I know they won 7 games last year, but it was a little bit of smoke and mirrors for them. The Saints, what are they going to be? Right. Again, this year, we know they've got Jameis there. We know they've got some talented players in Kamara and Michael Thomas, and they drafted well this year. And how long is Tom going to be there in Tampa? So like this division, before Brady got there was always known for kind of having a different division winner each and every year for a long time. Like that was the trend for this division. Like it was never the same team 2 years in a row, even when the Saints were pretty good with Drew Brees. They had some down years as well when Atlanta was really good. The Panthers obviously made those that Super Bowl run where they played against Denver. So I think it's a good fit for Baker from a destination standpoint. And I also think that there's no reason for him to not win this competition, right? The Panthers went out and they traded for him. I know the Panthers kind of made a big deal about trading for Sam Darnold the year before, but this is Baker Mayfield. I mean, he has had more success in the league than Sam Darnold, even though they were picked both in the top 3 in that draft class. But this has got to be Baker's job to lose, and I think it's a good fit for him. And a team in Carolina that really hasn't had that kind of swagger since Cam Newton was there leading the team. So I think it's a good move for Carolina to get some swagger back too, maybe bring some fieriness back to that squad. And that's in my backyard here. I'm in North Carolina, and it's exciting for me now being able to go to maybe some Panthers games and see Baker in person. So I like it. I like it for Baker. I like it for the Panthers.
Yeah, I echo the same exact sentiments. You touched on the fact that this is Baker's job to lose. It's being advertised as a job that's being fought for, but you don't trade for Baker Mayfield under the assumption that you're going to bring him in to compete with Sam Darnold, who not threw your season away per se, but he did not give you the best opportunity last year when, at least in my mind, going into 2021, they were a team that I felt like they were talented surrounding the quarterback position. They dealt with injuries at the quarterback position, around the QB as well. But they're a very young, talented team, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They go out and trade for Stefon Gilmore. They try to make a couple moves to make some type of noise, but their quarterback position has been anchoring them down. So that was Sam Darnold, partially on Sam Darnold. You don't bring Baker Mayfield in thinking Sam Darnold has a shot at this job. So I definitely think this is going to be Baker's job to lose for sure. Do you see a win projection for Carolina? Do you think this is a needle mover in terms of how many wins you might see them getting this year?
I think it gives them a chance to be a playoff team in 2022. I don't know that they're going to be necessarily a high double-digit win team or even a double-digit win team for that matter, but I think they can push. I think they can push to be above 500, and I think they can push now with 7 playoff teams to be a playoff team in the NFC. When you kind of compare and contrast the quarterback landscape, right? To make a simple comparison between the AFC and the NFC, I mean, the NFC has some open spots now. We're talking about for the playoffs, right? You've got your kind of old guard there, and Brady and Rodgers, and obviously Stafford with the Rams. But Russell Wilson's no longer in Seattle. Matt Ryan, whatever you want to say about him, no longer in Atlanta. What's the Niners quarterback situation? We don't know what Trey Lance is going to be. Kirk Cousins, like there's not like a ton of top end quarterback talent in the NFC right now. So I like this Panthers team to make a run, at least to challenge for a playoff spot in 2022. So I'll give them, I think 9 wins is something that is fair and could get them in the playoffs.
Yeah, totally. Especially as you keep mentioning how wide open this conference is. There is certainly zero consistency when it comes to the NFC at this point. And I would even say,
I forgot to mention Kyler and Dak, but I mean, you get my point. The NFC just isn't as loaded with quarterbacks as the AFC is.
No, definitely. And, teams like the Cardinals and teams like the Cowboys, they're very intimidating on the surface. But when it comes to grind time, when it comes to when it really matters, they're a team that have historically folded in big moments. And, granted, the Cardinals haven't been on that stage as much as the Cowboys. They aren't two teams that really jump off the page as true contending football teams at this point in time. So it still speaks exactly to the point that the Carolina Panthers have as good of a chance as anybody else in this division, in the conference as a whole right now. What's going on, Robbie? Thank you for popping in. Jason says, no, Baker has to learn where all the light switches are in the new stadium. Yeah. Apparently, I saw some report that said Baker tried to do like a going away commercial with Progressive, but it didn't end up working. The Browns were probably like, get the hell out of our stadiums. Like, don't come back here with cameras. I don't blame them. But
only the Browns could Browns this up like they've done, man. Like if Deshaun, he looks like he's going to at least be suspended for a full year, possibly longer. Like that Browns team top to bottom is pretty good roster too. And they could have just thrown away a year in the playoffs potentially with what they did. But we'll see. We'll see.
Oh my god! I mean, that's a whole nother can of worms.
Yes.
There was a span of like 4 or 5 weeks where there was something new with Deshaun Watson, and we were talking about it in the recent news section every single week because
Hmm.
something new was coming out about this guy. And honestly, I don't know how true it was. It was from one of these smaller beat writers for the Browns, so who knows how much credibility it had. But I saw it making some rounds on Twitter. But apparently 6 to 7, 5 to 7 games for Deshaun is like a possibility according to this source,
Mm.
which would be atrocious in every sense of the word if they only gave him 5 to 7 games. But
Hmm.
I mean, you'd really like to think the NFL is smart enough to realize, at least for their own sake, if they want to forget the rest of the morality, which is very well in the possibility of things, they have to go through PR hell. I mean, you would think, at least in their own moral compass, that they would be suspending the guy for at least
You
a year.
You would think, but the NFL has handled situations poorly in the past, like Ray Rice situation. Like obviously that was probably one of the better ones they hit, but like this Calvin Ridley situation, right, where they're suspending him for a year, and then you contrast that to other guys like Zeke Elliott and others who, for what seem to be more heinous incidents, right, were suspended for fewer games. So like the NFL is like they'll take a PR hit, but like, hey, the people are still going to watch the game. So for them, they're like Teflon in a way, and it's sad, but until it really starts affecting their viewership and their bottom line, like I wouldn't put it past the NFL to do anything, honestly.
Yeah, totally. And that's, like you said, they're like Teflon. This beast that is the NFL. Um, they're not going to bat an eye until, like you said, there's some change made, and there won't be. I mean, I can't sit here and say I'm going to boycott the NFL. I mean, it's just not going to happen.
Right.
And I would imagine there would never be a mass amount of people that was large enough, at least, to really make that kind of an impact. And that's just unfortunately the reality of things. But maybe the NFL will actually get something right with this one this time around. But we'll see. Time will tell with the Deshaun Watson situation. But point number two, the second recent news article that kind of came out today was something that, not really important, but something I wanted to touch on anyway. The Houston Texans unveiled a new helmet.
I saw it.
This was interesting to me. I'm gonna pull it up if you guys did not happen to. If you guys did not happen to see it, this is what it looks like. I don't know if that's matte. I don't know if that's a matte red. It's a shiny, nice, glossy red. It definitely goes away from the black or the navy blue that they usually rolled with. I don't know if I dig it per se, but I dig the idea of NFL teams branching out,
Hmm.
to try and change things up. I feel like their jersey design can be bland sometimes. They're very strict on what they can allow teams to wear, which doesn't make sense. But I like to see teams changing things up. So maybe the Bills will do something like this.
I mean, I personally like the Texans helmet, and I personally like the Texans red jerseys that they wear
Yes.
sometimes. Like to me, those are their cooler jerseys that they have. So those red jerseys that they wear from time to time with that red helmet, I think it would look good. And I mean, it's not really going away necessarily from their primary color. Obviously, it's one of their primary colors. It's that blue and the red. So I personally like it. I think they did a good job with that design. And yeah, I think maybe this will get the creative juices flowing for some other teams, including the Bills. Although I will say the Bills going with, they have made changes, right? They went to the white helmet with the charging buffalo, and like obviously moved away from those kind of drought era 2000s like darker blue, and went back to kind of the more traditional like throwback blues. So like the Bills have made changes like in the last 15-20 years to their jerseys, but who knows, maybe this spurs the Bills to go for what a lot of people want to see, and that's the red helmet.
Yeah, I know. It would be really cool to see Josh Allen. We've seen all the jersey swaps and stuff of the creative folk out there on Twitter. They've
Mhm.
put together some really cool jersey swaps of Josh Allen and Diggs. It would be really cool to see something like
I
that.
I'll say this, my favorite current Bills uniform combo is the all white.
I
I mean,
agree.
for
I
me,
was
the
hoping you'd
all
say that.
white with the white helmet, like
100%.
to me, that is so clean, and that's just my favorite one they have right now. I know it's like it's not the red or the blue, but like man, with the blue numbers and the red trim and the white on white, and the white helmet, it looks really good to me.
Oh, I completely agree. The white jersey itself is beautiful. I think it's the best one they got when they wear the all white completely, which I think is the only time they wear white, if I'm not mistaken. No, white and blue.
They wear the white with the blue pants, and I'm not a big fan of that one, to be honest. I'd rather them go with The white with the blue pants is probably actually my least favorite combo that they wear, which is funny because I like the all white.
But yeah, I mean, I hope that. Oh, and the Patriots, they're going back to their what is it? The guy crowd, the guy in the center stance, whatever that's called. I think they're going back to that old traditional style for a couple games this year as well. So teams are kind of flowing back and forth. So maybe the Bills will hop on that.
Yeah, there was that. It was a couple years ago, maybe it was several years ago, when it was like the AFL's like 50th anniversary, I believe, and like the Patriots wore their AFL uniforms that year, and the Raiders did, and the Bills did. Like, so I remember there was something like that a couple years ago. Maybe it was more than a couple, but I remember the Patriots did wear those red uniforms with the old school, like, what's his name, Petey the Patriot, or so. I don't even remember his name. Yeah.
Honestly, now that we keep talking about it, I feel like I'm thinking of more teams that are doing this. I think the Bucs are bringing back the creamsicle jerseys, if I'm not mistaken. I think they might be bringing those back for a couple games. I don't know. I think they are, though. I think it seems like this is becoming a trend, at least for this season. Hopefully it is. That'd be really cool. But not to beat down the jersey conversation too much. Let's move on to the third point, being the N'Keal Harry trade that went down today. The Patriots trade wide receiver N'Keal Harry to the Chicago Bears for a 2024 seventh round pick. Not too much conversation to be had here. But the reason I kind of bring this up is because in the past, I've had conversations with just kind of folk in, the NFL landscape in general. I don't think Bill Belichick's a good general manager. I feel like that could be a consensus agreement, but I feel like Boston, New England Patriots fans, of course, would disagree. But this is just another example of another failed experiment with, Bill Belichick, the general manager. It's like you can't bring in all of these players and just assume that because of his great coaching style and his ability to bring a team together, whatever he does in the Patriot way, it's not going to pan out for all these guys. And on that note, I mean, it's kind of it's kind of hard to screw up this kind of draft class. I mean, after N'Keal Harry was drafted, I mean, this is what was remaining, and he messed it up. So, I mean, it just kind of speaks to the narrative that I just don't think Bill Belichick really knows what he's doing sometimes.
Draft, when you watch the draft on ESPN, NFL Network, they constantly sniff Belichick's jock on his drafting, when in reality, he's not a good drafter. And especially true when it comes to drafting wide receivers. He's like historically bad at drafting wide receivers, like Chad Jackson and N'Keal Harry, like amongst others, right? Dobbs, right? Like there was or Dobson. I mean, they have drafted so many terrible wide receivers. Not that they were bad prospects, but they didn't obviously pan out. And so, like, the fact that he gets lauded as this great GM, he's really not that good of a drafter. Now, he has done well in maneuvering within drafts. I will give him credit for that, like moving down, collecting picks, doing things like that. And he has flipped some guys like Jimmy G for good capital, but the actual drafting of players, the players that they have selected, really haven't by and large panned out. The hit rate's low anyway for anyone in the draft. Like if you're at like a 33% or whatever hit rate on guys that actually contribute, like that's pretty good. And he's been really bad. And so I think, to be honest, it's like this Patriot way is a bit overblown. I mean, Bruce Exclusive made a great, Bruce Nolan on Twitter made a great point today. He's like, it's really just like the Patriot way is just a culmination of Tom Brady being as great as he was for as long as he was, and Bill Belichick being a really good defensive coach, right? I mean, that's basically it. And guys wanting to go play there.
That's the biggest thing, is the draw that the dynasty built up, this draw for guys to come over there. And then, that's part of the Bill Belichick general managing, of course, is bringing in players that want to come to the Patriots. I can't imagine his job has been too difficult over the last 20 years or so, as far as general managing, especially even from a coaching standpoint. I think Bill Belichick, in his own right, is the greatest coach of all time. But, as far as a general manager goes, I think his coaching ability has covered up so many potential errors when it comes to his general managing skills. And, even this past draft was just question mark after question mark. He had a couple solid value picks. Obviously, who are we all to say? But from an outside perspective, a couple solid picks from a value standpoint. But there were other ones where we were just left scratching our heads, like, well, what are you doing, Bill? But who knows? It'll end up working out in some crazy way, and then all the Patriots fans will be like, see, he knew what he was looking at. He knew what he was drafting.
I mean, and it's not even just like us as like, content creators commenting. I mean, like Sean McVay basically made fun of Bill Belichick at his press conference when he found out he drafted Cole Strange in the first round, right? So it's like, I mean, it's not just us, right? It's like respected head coaches in the NFL, Super Bowl winning coaches are kind of laughing at him and poking fun. So, it says something right there.
It definitely does. And, to all the Patriots fans who probably are not watching this, but to any Patriots fan that thinks that Bill Belichick is a good general manager, you might have to think twice after trading what was a first round pick wide receiver to the Chicago Bears, who's probably the only team right now that would take N'Keal Harry for any kind of capital because they
Poor
have
Bears.
poor Justin Fields. I hope
feel
that
bad
kid
for
makes
him.
it out of there. I hope he makes it out alive because this year's it's going to be one uphill battle for that poor guy.
I mean, it really is, not to get too sidetracked, but I feel for Justin Fields. And the Bears are obviously on the Bills' schedule, and it's really one of the few, I'll call easy games, if you want to call it that, easier opponents. But they are really not doing Justin Fields a ton of favors. And Matt Nagy, I said it from day one, I thought he was overrated, and I'm glad the Bears got rid of him. But Eberflus has got his work cut out for him, man, with that team. And they're going to be one of the worst teams in the league this year, probably.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think going 0-17 is probably near impossible at this stage of the NFL just because of how unpredictable things are.
Right.
But if there's a roster out there that at least has a shot at it, it's the poor Chicago Bears. I mean, it's going to take some elaborate coaching, a high uptick, very well-paced offseason to get this team prepared for the schedule they have in front of them. So, God bless the Chicago Bears. Hope Justin Fields survives. But that will move us on from the recent events. We're getting into the Q&A. The Q&A segment. And actually, there was a question that I wanted to ask you before I get into my questions, and this is going to come from Robbie. And Robbie asked, do you think the Bills win over the Rams in week 1?
I do. And the reason I say this is I think that there's a little more pressure on the Rams in week 1. They're playing at home. They're coming off the Super Bowl win. LA is going to be a freaking zoo. It's, main prime time, which the Bills have actually performed quite well in over the last couple of years. So I do think there's a little bit more pressure on the Rams in week 1. It's a road game for the Bills. It's early in the season. So I don't think there's a ton of pressure on the Bills necessarily in week 1. We obviously know the Bills beat the Rams a couple years back. That was, before Matthew Stafford, but that was in Buffalo. So I don't think the Bills are going to be intimidated. I think the Bills are going to be motivated. I think they'll be ready to play. I think the Bills, after kind of laying an egg in week 1 last year against the Steelers, are going to kind of remember that and take that into week 1. So yeah, I think they will beat the Rams in week 1.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Bills have a lot of tough games on their schedule, but there really aren't many where I look at it and I think, this is going to be a game that I think they lose. And just for the sake of me believing the Bills truly are, the best or one of the best teams in the NFL, I have to look at one of these games eventually and say, they probably lose this one, or I don't see a 17-0 season happening.
No, I mean that's as unrealistic as it is to be 0-17. It's equally unrealistic to be 17-0, if not more unrealistic to be 17-0. So
absolutely. So it's like one of these games eventually I have to mark up as a loss for one reason or another, and I guess this game is one of them, just because a combination of things. You mentioned that last year we started off slow against the Steelers on our own home field, and we lost that home opener, the first time we had fans back in the stadium, at least at full capacity in a year and a half. We dropped that one. I guess I'm kind of playing that the opposite way you are.
Yep.
We start off slow. Not to mention, I think there was some statistic that I looked up because I had this conversation when the schedule originally came out, and I think Super Bowl teams in their first week after they win the Super Bowl, they're like 19-2 since 2000 or something along those lines. It's like, yeah, so the Bills in some sort of sense are going to be grand scheme underdogs, if that makes sense. There's some narratives that I guess I can work my way into convincing myself that this may be one of our 2 to 3, maybe 4 losses of the year. Obviously, I'm not rooting for that to happen, but eventually there's going to be a loss down the line or at some point on the schedule. And this one, I think, there's so many factors playing against us to the fact that I think this might be one of our losses. All right. So, Robbie, if you guys have any other questions, leave them down in the comment section. I'll be happy to answer them. But my first question for you, Dave, is going to be this. Will Stefon Diggs retire with the Buffalo Bills? There was some chatter with Trayvon Diggs apparently saying he can see himself playing with Steph at some point throughout their respective careers. And there was a little bit of a back and forth conversation, like would Steph go to the Cowboys? Would Trayvon come here? And it, brought me to ask this question.
I think as long as Josh Allen's playing at a high level, the Bills aren't letting Stephon Diggs get out of Buffalo, whatever that cost may be. I mean, those two have such a unique chemistry. We talk about Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer playing both playing safety, having that chemistry as a duo at safety, but like that you know franchise quarterback, number one wide receiver relationship is important, and we've seen some of those relationships across the league go their separate ways this past offseason with Devontae Adams going to the Raiders, Tyreek Hill going to the Dolphins. There's something special between Josh and Stefon. And I think as long as Josh is playing at a high level still, and we believe and it makes sense that Josh's career will probably go longer than Stefon Diggs will, it makes sense to me that Stefon Diggs will remain in Buffalo. I mean, he just got that new extension, obviously, but I don't think as long as he's got Josh Allen throwing him the ball and Diggs is a player who doesn't necessarily rely on like top end speed or some characteristic or attribute that is necessarily not going to age gracefully. I think Stephon Diggs' game will age gracefully, kind of in the same vein as like a Larry Fitzgerald's game age gracefully, and we saw him play his entire career, obviously, with the Cardinals. So obviously Diggs' entire career hasn't been with the Bills, but I think you could see that be the case where he will retire with the Bills.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I could not agree more. Steph, I think, is 29 years of age, right? Either 28 or 29. And you'd like to imagine, I mean, receivers do not play nearly as long as quarterbacks do,
Mm-hmm.
especially at such a high level. So, in partner with that contract, the extension he signed, it'd be hard to imagine Josh or Steph, I'm sorry, going anywhere else while Josh is here, especially. So, yeah, I think I completely agree with that.
I'll put one caveat to that. If
Okay.
late in his career they get a Super Bowl, like, and it's the first one they get, Josh and Steph together, and it's late in Steph's career, I could see a situation where after that Super Bowl win, then maybe the contract, is up or something, and he might go play a year or something, kind of like Thurman did with the Dolphins or whatever, or Bruce did
That's true.
with Washington. But that to me, like, I don't think he's getting out of town unless the Bills have a Super Bowl under their belts.
Yeah, it definitely is one of those things where Diggs has become a part of this journey that he's embarking on, and I think guys like Von Miller that are just hopping on the train. It's like the slight difference between a guy like Stefon Diggs and Von Miller is like Diggs has been here for not the very beginning of the build, but when things really started to pick up, he was a big reason for that. So it's going to be
Mhm.
part of his pride and who he is as a person, his competitive spirit to get us over that
Yep.
hump. So I completely agree with you there. Jason says Diggs will be 34 when his contract expires. I think he's gone before that happens, whether he returns
Mm.
to the bill or not. Interesting. Interesting. So you think he'll be retired before he turns 34? Okay. Interesting. Vlad says, damn, I missed the show. So I'm caveman. I'm going to have to rewind. No problem, Vlad. I appreciate you stopping in no matter what. Thank you for hopping in and leaving your thoughts and saying hello. It's always greatly appreciated. But question number 2. This is kind of regarding Baker, but there's another quarterback on the market that is looking to get traded. Do you think he gets
Mhm.
traded? And where does Jimmy Garoppolo end up?
I mean, this could be an interesting situation where maybe he ends up. So there are two teams I look at that kind of maybe have rosters to be pretty good or be at least maybe in a playoff team if they hit the right quarterback. And it's going to depend on how these teams view their current quarterback situation. Detroit with Jared Goff. Um, Obviously, they made that trade to get rid of Matthew Stafford, which obviously looks terrible on them right now as Matthew Stafford wins the Super Bowl in LA. But could Jimmy G be a more serviceable quarterback in Detroit than Jared Goff? I don't know. Detroit's putting a pretty good roster together. I don't know if that's a mesh with Dan Campbell or not, but um, and I don't know necessarily that the Lions would want to make another trade for a quarterback like they just did. But maybe a team like Seattle who's going to kind of see what they have with Drew Lock. Maybe a team like that could be interested in a guy like Jimmy G. Um, Drew Lock has has talent, but again, hasn't really shown exactly what he can do as a starter. But if you look around the league, like there's not a ton of teams that either don't have investment in a quarterback that maybe is still unproven or just kind of in quarterback purgatory, right? Got teams like Atlanta invested in quarterbacks in the draft this past year. Um, you know, there are other teams like the Panthers, obviously, who traded for Baker. There are teams like the Saints who draft and Pittsburgh who drafted Kenny Pickett. Like so, it's going to probably take like a year or two to figure out some of these guys. So you look at teams that maybe are in purgatory a little bit right now, and that's why I say like Seattle, Detroit. But I feel like teams right now are going to look to the draft rather than going for a guy like Jimmy G. And this is probably why he still hasn't been traded yet, because I don't think teams are willing to pony up, what it would take draft capital wise or player wise to get a guy like Jimmy G, who is honestly like a middle of the road quarterback. I'll tell you a team that would be interesting, but again, this team made a investment in Malik Willis, and that would be the Tennessee Titans. Jimmy G is kind of that same game manager type of quarterback that a Tannehill is, although I will give Tannehill credit. He has a little bit more running ability than Jimmy G, but you start kind of trying to force things and you're like, there's really no great spot for him right now. So it's kind of weird. He's I think shows what the quarterback market is right now when Baker Mayfield, a former number 1 overall pick, only fetches you a conditional 5th rounder. That Jimmy G it's not going to be for much if he does get traded. It's someone going to be throwing like a conditional 7th rounder or something back to San Francisco just to have him on the roster.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting situation for Jimmy going forward because, as you mentioned, there's really no perfect suitor for him at the moment. And I think the 49ers are probably going to be looking for at least a 5th, right? I think they'd be lucky to get a 5th at the moment for Jimmy, especially knowing I think the rest of the league at this point knows they're trying to throw the smoke screens out there that the quarterback competition between Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo is ongoing. But we all know that if Jimmy G does start by week 1, he's not going to be the starter by week 18. So
No.
Trey Lance they're going to be their guy going forward. Everybody
Right.
knows that they're trying to move on from him. So
Maybe the Giants. I mean, Tyrod's there, I know, but like Daniel Jones, I don't know. Like again, but the Giants then are right kind of back into that purgatory of like, do we invest in a quarterback or do we not? So it's weird with these teams that are kind of like in that situation. The Bills were that team for a long time, honestly. Like Tyrod, like you know, Fitzpatrick, like we were that team. Do we invest? Do we not? Like, and so Jimmy G kind of feels like that type of like Ryan Fitzpatrick type player. No disrespect to Fitz, but like it takes a really good team around him to kind of get to where they want to go. So very tough situation for Jimmy, although he got paid, so I don't feel too bad for him.
Yeah, I don't either. He's also a pretty attractive dude. But Jason says something that he laughs at. But to be quite honest, like I think Jimmy's in a situation where he might get moved when a team needs a quarterback, whether it's via injury. I mean, there is never a situation where a team gets through their season, or all 32 teams get through their season with their quarterback healthy. And if it's a contender, they don't feel comfortable with their backup. Hell, Jimmy Garoppolo is sitting right in, behind Trey Lance, and the 49ers are like, here, take him. Take your best shot with him. And I mean, he is a proven winner to an extent, depending on the situation around him. He's gotten teams far enough as far as the Super Bowl. So a team like the Cleveland Browns without Deshaun Watson, how much faith do they have in Jacoby Brissett? Who knows? How many games does Deshaun Watson get suspended? Who knows? But Jimmy Garoppolo with the Cleveland Browns, I mean, if there's a team that is most similar to the 49ers, I would probably say it's the Browns. They got a relatively solid defense, nowhere near 49er level, but their offense, the way they run the ball, Jimmy Garoppolo would be managing the game to a bare minimum. So I think this is, as much as he laughs about it, honestly, a pretty large possibility in my mind. And question, well, Pokemon also has a question. I don't want to hold this segment up too long, but Pokemon does have a question. Where do you think Beasley lands? I honestly forgot he was even out there. Cole Beasley, do you think he could sign anywhere?
Very interesting situation for him. I think that Beasley waits till to training camp, sees kind of what shakes out with injuries, like similar to the quarterback situation. But I mean, obviously he's gonna need to go to a team who needs either a starting slot or has an injury to their slot I think that an interesting place for him could be Pittsburgh. I mean, they drafted Calvin Austin, I know, but like they've got guys like Deontay Johnson and Claypool who are outside guys. They lost Juju Smith-Schuster in free agency to the Chiefs. Pittsburgh Steelers seem like a pretty good fit to me for a guy like Cole Beasley, a team that has relied, at least to the last couple years, on the pretty short passing game with Roethlisberger's they got Money Mitch there. So there is some familiarity there. I don't know if it's going to be Pickett or Mitch to start, but I think Pittsburgh's an interesting and a potential interesting landing spot for Beasley.
Yeah, I mean that's a very good point. They're a team that they have not moved the ball downfield very far, especially as of late. Big Ben was a human corpse, and in the backfield. But maybe Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett pushes the ball downfield a little bit more. But they're a team that definitely relies on the short game, getting the ball out quick. 1.5 seconds get the ball out. I think Big Ben had one of the quickest times to throw last season. I'm not exactly sure what the actual time was, but this guy was getting the ball out as soon as it touched his hands. From the center. So I think Cole Beasley would be perfect there if he's able to stay healthy and he's not too focused on his rap career. I do think Cole Beasley in Pittsburgh makes complete sense. All right, so that's going to wrap up the Q&A segment. I don't want to stick around on that for too long. We're going to move on to the Would You Rather segment. And Dave, I did kind of explain it briefly, but for anybody that is not familiar with the Would You Rather segment, so I'm going to present a player to Dave, and then I'm going to put 5 other players up against that individual, and Dave is going to tell me which player he'd rather have. Forget the context of the future, no age involved. It's just coming down to Super Bowl or die next season. You have a team you're trying to build. Who would you rather have? So the player we are going to roll with is somebody we've been talking about a little bit often in the show, and that's going to be Baker Mayfield. He's been a hot conversation for the last week, so I want to see where Baker Mayfield is in the eyes of Dave. Baker Mayfield's first matchup is going to be Mitch Trubisky himself. Who are you rolling with next season?
Baker. I'm taking Baker over Mitch. Yeah.
So,
I mean, I like Mitch. Look, don't get me wrong, but I just think there is, as much as like Baker takes a ton of heat, like he does have at least a flash of an it factor to him, right? And he showed it in spots. Obviously, he had the incredible rookie season, and he's shown it in spots. He's going to be willing to die on the field for you. He's super competitive. So I'm taking Baker over Mitch.
I hear you. And Baker Mayfield is, like you said, he brings that attitude to a team that I think you kind of need to be a successful football team. Josh Allen's got that kind of attitude. Cam Newton had that kind of attitude. Baker's got that kind of attitude. Tom Brady's got an attitude to him. We all know that. So, you kind of need that fiery aspect. And Mitch kind of strikes me as just laid back. He'll tell you good game, but he won't get in your face and yell at you, which I do think is rather necessary to being a quarterback, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, so Baker takes round 1, but it's going to get a little bit harder than that, I promise you. And another guy we've been talking about a little bit this show, Baker Mayfield versus Jimmy G. Who would you rather take?
I'm still taking Baker in that situation. I'm taking the guy who, okay, Jimmy G brought the Niners to Super Bowl. I get that. But if I need a guy for a game who's going to potentially go in a deep run in the playoffs and potentially need him to shoulder me winning the game, it's still going to be Baker over Jimmy G. Jimmy G had that nice run where he took the Niners Super Bowl, but I still don't think his level of success, and as Bruce always says, wins are not a quarterback stat just because he's won games with the Niners. I still take Baker over Jimmy G in this situation if I need to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I can't stand Jimmy Garoppolo, to be perfectly honest. I mean, we saw, last year, they made it out of Green Bay. They beat the Cowboys, and they made it out of Green Bay, and they're playing the Rams in the NFC Championship game, I believe. And, they have a situation where they could drive down the field and score. And I don't remember if that would have tied the game or win it. But, you just knew the whole time. Like Jimmy Garoppolo in a 2-minute drill having to pass his way down the field. That's not going to work. It's just not going to happen. No. And they go 3 and out. I think he might have thrown a pick. But all I remember is Jimmy trying to roll out, then getting spun around by one of the Rams pass rushers and just throwing the ball up in the air. It's like you just knew the whole time. Yep. Like they weren't getting down the field with Jimmy Garoppolo. And with Baker Mayfield, you'd like to think you have more of a chance than Jimmy Garoppolo gives you in that situation. All right, so Baker wins round 2. Can Baker win round number 3? We got Baker Mayfield against Tua Tagovailoa.
Baker for the sweep for me right now. Tua to me is a guy that has to be in a perfect situation with perfect um what's the word? Just like perfect circumstances around him. They're putting all the talent around him in Miami this year. There's a lot of pressure on Tua this year. I think he's been overhyped because he came from Alabama, um, and obviously made that magical run in Alabama when he came in for Jalen Hurts. But man, I trust Baker. I mean, well, honestly, in this situation too, like Baker just has more of a track record in the NFL. Even as much as you know, if you don't like him, he still has a better track record in the NFL than Tua does. So Baker 3 for 3 for me so far in this game.
A lot of Baker love we're getting here. It's I don't know if it gets harder. I mean, it depends on how you view Baker, and that's kind of why I wanted to use him for this because I'm kind of interested in. I myself have I kind of a gray area when it comes to Baker. I really don't know where to put him on a list or who to stack him up against and who I'd rather
It's
have.
hard.
So
It
yeah,
is
it
hard.
really is, and it's gonna get harder. We got Baker Mayfield against Jalen Hurts. Taking here.
Ooh, yeah, this is a tough one because Jalen really did have a nice season last year for Philadelphia, and I think they've put a nice, duo around him as well. They're, the Tua treatment, maybe not to that. Maybe that's an insult to Jalen, but they got Devontae Smith and they went out and they traded for AJ Brown, big splashy move during the draft. Um, man, this is probably the toughest one so far, but I will, for the sake of upside, on this one, I'll take Jalen Hurts, just for the sake of mixing things up a bit. I still think Baker is probably at this point, like he's probably still the more trustworthy player. But if I put a ceiling next to Jalen Hurts, I think the ceiling's a little higher than Baker's, and obviously he still has that competitive spirit in him. Obviously, he got moved from Alabama, went to Oklahoma, followed in Baker's footsteps, honestly, in at the program anyway, and really, I think Jalen Hurts does possess some of that it factor that Baker has as well. I don't necessarily know that he's been able to show it fully yet in just the one season that he got to play, but I think it's in there somewhere for Jalen Hurts.
I agree, and it's just got to be brought out. I think a lot of people are down on Jalen Hurts. They beat a majority of their victories came against teams under 500, the whole 9 yards. You hear every excuse in the book, but Jalen Hurts, whether you like it or not, he showed
And they were a playoff
flashes.
team. They were a
Yeah,
playoff team a year ago. I mean, I know they got waxed by Tampa Bay in the playoffs, but they showed some fight in that game. And they were never really in it, but they showed fight. They came back um a little bit, and I like the moxie that Jalen Hurts has, and I like the toughness that he showed. So I like Jalen Hurts.
Oh yeah, I agree. I mean, his whole college story is it's really something you have a hard time rooting against when it comes to Jalen Hurts,
Yeah.
right? And he gets to the NFL and he gets pulled back and forth like a dog toy in the whole Carson Wentz situation, and you don't know whether
Hmm.
he's going to be playing Carson Wentz is going to be playing Doug Peterson's playing Nate Sudfeld to tank the team, even though he's going to get fired. It's like that whole situation was just a complete mess.
Weird.
In Jalen Hurts' first season, so he goes into next year with Nick Sirianni. He has a pretty promising season. He wasn't the best passer at points, but he was still finding a way to help the Philadelphia Eagles win. And I think the rest just comes with time. As long as the quarterback has that determination and has that ability to fight with the athletic upside. Obviously, I won't go as far as to say Josh Allen-esque, but it kind of reminds me of he's got that fight. When it really comes down to it, Jalen Hurts is going to try and find a way no matter what. Even though I have obviously a lot more faith in Josh Allen to do so. And number 5, this is the final matchup. So Baker's 3-1 at the moment. Can he win number 5? We got Baker Mayfield against Mac Jones.
I'm taking Baker in this one. I mean, I just think Mac Jones' game is so limited, arm talent wise. I mean, I know he's a very kind of cerebral type player. And I think, again, like Mac Jones in the right situation can be a successful quarterback. I don't think, I think that the truth about Mac Jones is somewhere in between where a lot of Bills fans put him and where a lot of Pats fans
Yep.
elevate him to, right
Right.
on that pedestal. I think the truth is somewhere in between for Mac Jones. I think he'll be a fine, serviceable quarterback in the NFL, but Baker Mayfield has the much higher ceiling than Mac Jones, and it kind of reminds me maybe a little bit of the Baker versus Jimmy G comparison in a way. Obviously, Mac can still prove otherwise, but for now, I'll take Baker, and it'll make him 4-1 in this would you rather.
Oh, Baker coming out swinging in the would you rather. I don't know. I'm just so worried. We all know Baker has the physical capabilities to be a very great quarterback. I feel like sometimes the mental gymnastics they worry me when it comes to Baker Mayfield.
Yep.
He's gone into this offseason, and obviously the Browns have handled the entire situation far less professionally and just embarrassingly in comparison to how any team would handle it, to be honest. But Baker Mayfield at times wasn't necessarily the most professional himself. And I, in some respects, have respect for that. You know, he wants to run his mouth a little bit, and I get it. But there are points where Baker, you gotta step back. You did kind of suck, regardless of the reason.
Yep.
Kind of just take a step back a little bit and realize, you had a relatively poor season, and I kind of just worry a little bit going from a different situation, it's such a toxic situation, to a team that's really been struggling with quarterbacks, going through the quarterback carousel. I think he's going to have a relatively thinking of a word earlier and I can't think of it now too.
The thing is, I will say this, like
yeah.
some of the teams you've put up, like teams that these quarterbacks have been associated with are better than the Panthers, right? Or if you want to even say maybe not the Browns, but like the Patriots are probably a better team than the Panthers, right? But I still think, just looking at the quarterbacks in a vacuum, I like Baker more. And you're right, but I do think, given his competitive nature, that he's going to want to prove the Browns made a mistake in the way they handled that situation. So I think motivation is not going to be an issue for him this year, which is working in his favor.
Definitely. Okay. Yeah, I definitely hear you there. And I mean, I'm pulling for Baker Mayfield at this point. How can you not root for Baker Mayfield to go out there and prove the Cleveland Browns just horribly, horribly wrong? I think everybody and their mother is kind of pulling for that narrative at this point. But that wraps up the Would You Rather. So we got 2 segments left. We're going to move on to the hot take. And Dave, do you want to kick off with your hot take? I know you had a pretty good one.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's the middle of July. It's the dog days of summer. It's hot. So we're going with a hot take here. And I will be consistent with this on the air raid hour as well as we go into our season predictions. So this is a little bit of a preview, sneak peek of one of my season predictions here. And that's that I think the Chargers are going to be in the AFC Championship game in 2022. I think they will win the AFC West, and I think they will be in the AFC Championship game against our Bills. I think Justin Herbert is a legitimate MVP candidate. That team is really good. I like their coach. I think they're going to be finally in a position where their defense is getting healthy. We know they've got Bosa, Derwin James. They've made investments in the defense. They got a guy like Austin Eckler, who is an absolute stud at running back. They drafted Isaiah Spiller. They obviously, have other complementary guys next to Keenan Allen as well. So I really like the Chargers roster, and it comes down to Justin Herbert and him being one of like the up and coming stars in the NFL. And I think the Chargers have a legitimate chance to be a team that makes noise in 2022 and makes it to the AFC Championship game after not making the playoffs a year ago in a loaded AFC.
Yeah, they're a team. I mean, they're up there on paper, at least, as one of the most talented, star-studded rosters in the NFL, without question. I mean, it's almost kind of unfair to look at the talent that they have, the proven talent, at least, whether or not they're still at that point in their career. Like guys like Khalil Mack, if he's able to stay healthy and still play at that high level, he will be ferocious next to Joey Bosa. And then you got J.C. Jackson alongside Derwin James in the secondary. Asante Samuel Jr. wasn't great in his rookie season, but I do think
I really liked him though coming out. I think he's going to step up this year.
I agree, especially with J.C. Jackson, Derwin James in that secondary. I think he's really going to learn a lot and fill that cornerback 2 role very nicely. So it's really going to come down to health, I think, with the Chargers. If they're able to.
And they drafted my guy, Zion Johnson. I really like Zion Johnson, interior guard from BC in the draft. Like that was I just think that was such a good draft, solid draft pick for a team that knows that they needed to bolster that interior and didn't have to make a flashy pick necessarily in the first round. So I really like what the Chargers are doing.
They did the same. They did something similar the season before when they took Rashawn Slater.
Yep.
I think it was the 14th to 16th pick, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was top 20. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's panned out as one of the top tackles in the NFL. at this point in his career. So if he's able to pick that up, Zion Johnson on the inside, the Chargers, they really do have a chance. It's going to come down to them staying out of their own way, making the correct decisions, on fourth down, their special teams not letting them down, and them able to stay healthy. It really is just going to be them staying out of their own way.
I mean, it's brutal division. Like, let's not be real. And that's why this is like a hot take, right? If the Chargers were in, the NFC or even in the, let's say, the AFC South, right? I mean, they'd be a shoe-in for a playoff spot. So at this point, they're not even guaranteed to make the playoffs given the division they're in. But I think they have such a good team. I really do.
I completely agree. And, like you said, if they weren't in that division, I mean, they would 100% be a playoff team in the eyes of most people. But it's like, how do you dethrone the Chiefs at this point? The Raiders also got stacked this season. The Broncos brought in Russell Wilson. So it's like at this point, it's just like a 25% chance for every team in that division right now. There's really no making any sense of it until it all unfolds. But I also had a hot take that I wanted to touch on real quick. And this is something that I kind of was thinking about. Like, if you would have asked me this question a year ago, I would have probably laughed at you. But now, I don't know, things are starting to kind of change in my mind. And my hot take is that I think Lamar Jackson is on pace to make the Hall of Fame. And I know that might strike some people as like, what the hell are you like talking about, right? And I completely understand. But my reasoning, and as I continue to think about it, the Hall of Fame itself is kind of like a revolving door. It doesn't seem like the standards are as high as you'd expect it to be to earn a gold jacket. And when it comes to the resume that you need to build, Lamar Jackson, he's got 2 Pro Bowls under his belt. He's a first-team All-Pro, second unanimous MVP in NFL history. And I know wins are not a quarterback stat, completely behind that narrative, but the Pro Football Hall of Fame doesn't give a shit, right? The dude's like 37-12 in his career. He stepped in for the Baltimore Ravens at a time that maybe wasn't fit, but he did early in his rookie season. So Lamar Jackson's had one hell of a season up to this point. On top of the fact that, as we all know, he's one of the best. He is the best running quarterback in NFL history. I think that's kind of undoubtable at this point, and he's one of the most athletic quarterbacks to ever play the game. So it's like he's really built this well-rounded resume individually. I think the missing piece is going to be the playoff success, and he's going to need a lot of it. He's going to need maybe not a Super Bowl, quite a Super Bowl, but a good solid amount of wins and continuous playoff success where he's constantly, maybe a 4th seed and even higher on a year-to-year basis, and they're making it to the divisional round, maybe the AFC Championship, and have a couple of those under their belt. But he's going to need a lot of postseason success, and I think he's in a situation where the Baltimore Ravens, they have a coaching staff that can put him in a situation to get into.
I love Lamar Jackson. That 2019 season was special, man. That MVP season was special for him. Carried a lot of people to that fantasy championships that year, for sure, in fantasy football. Lamar Jackson, Jim Harbaugh, kudos to him for moving on for Joe Flacco probably sooner than some Ravens fans wanted to admit, because the unknown with Lamar Jackson and whether he could succeed in the NFL. The Ravens as a team have to prove that stylistically the way that they've built the offense around Lamar Jackson can win in the playoffs, right? Plain and simple. Like, they have to, maybe not necessarily win a Super Bowl, but they have to. Lamar's probably got to get to a Super Bowl at some point and show some playoff success, some sustained playoff success. And it's not just about him either, right? But the fact of the matter is, it's going to come down to the Ravens organization, and when it does, it's going to reflect on him, fair or not, right? Whether it's fair or not that the wins and losses are pinned on him, and he's going to have his detractors that say that brand of football can't win in the playoffs until he does it. So he's going to have to do it. Like, we obviously know Mike Vick went on that, on that run with Atlanta, and they were able to, have some playoff runs. They went on some playoff runs in Philadelphia, but he was never able to get that Super Bowl. Running quarterbacks, stylistically, it's tough, right? It just historically hasn't been the type of player and the type of offenses that have won Super Bowls, but it's not impossible. And Lamar Jackson's special enough that he could do it. And if he continues on this pace statistically, even if it's just regular season, like, there's no doubt, but he really would make his case a whole lot stronger if he could get some playoff wins, and that team could get some playoff wins.
Absolutely. absolutely. I think that's, absolutely the last piece. And for a guy that's only been in the league for 4 years, starting for three, I think he's built one hell of a case up to this point. And like I said, I think the Baltimore Ravens are a long-standing franchise with a ton of experience, especially in the coaching staff.
Yeah.
Respect that, they'll be able to put Lamar Jackson in a situation to build that part of his resume up. And I also think that Lamar's a very talented passer. It's just a matter of it's the mind that I think he's still trying to get past. But I do think he's got a very, very talented arm. I think he can read the field at points better than people give him credit for. So if he's able to
He can throw
evolve
it,
that part of
man.
his
There's
game,
no
yeah,
doubt about it. I mean,
absolutely.
interesting move the Ravens made trading Hollywood Brown during the draft. Going out and drafting Charlie Kohler and Isaiah Likely, I believe it was. So like they're really obviously a tight end focused team with Mark Andrews there, and they still had Nick Boyd. Like they need they need to round out their offense a bit, right? Like they need it to be more than just Lamar Jackson running the ball and throwing the Mark Andrews, right? Like Hollywood Brown quietly had over 90 catches last year. So like that's out the window now. Like where is that going to come from this year? Is it going to be Devin Duvernay? Is it going to be Rashad Bateman? Is he going to step up in and I like Rashad Bateman a lot. So maybe there is some hope there for the Ravens too, even without Hollywood Brown.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for him, but I feel I feel for Lamar Jackson. It's been a interesting wide receiver room he's had surrounding him ever
Mm.
since he got to the league. And last offseason I was kind of making jokes. It's like he was looking for a wide receiver, and they bring in Sammy Watkins, and now even he's gone. It's like now what does he have?
Yeah.
And it's not much, but I assume that they're really going to try and keep the running backs healthy, especially this time around. And maybe Lamar's not the one running it constantly, but
Mm.
they're going to be out of the pistol. It's going to be J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Justice Hill.
Yeah.
Just
J.K. Dobbins back from injury. The Gus Bus is there, obviously. Justice Hill, I believe they drafted a running back too, if I'm not mistaken.
did. Yeah, you're right.
Let me go check their depth chart real quick. I'm pretty sure. I can't remember who it was off the top of my head. Uh,
Tip my tongue.
Tyler Beatty, and they also signed Mike Davis. So they've got
Wow.
a slew of backs in there. Um, and so I think Rashad Bateman's got a lot of pressure on his shoulders this year at
Mhm.
the receiver position. We know what Mark Andrews is. He's an absolute stud, and they have a really good defensive line drafted Tyler Linderbaum, the center, in the first round. So, like, I like what they did in the draft and then took some flyers on guys like David Ajabo, who could be a top talent on defense, obviously coming from back from the Achilles injury. Kyle Hamilton, a really good safety. They have a really good team. I think the Ravens will be back this year. Another team who I think, kind of like the Chargers, didn't make the playoffs a year ago, but I think the Ravens will be right in the mix for that AFC North again this year.
Yeah, I think so too. I think if the Ravens don't struggle with injuries, the Cincinnati Bengals miracle run never happens. I think the Ravens, I think the stars align for the Bengals in multiple respects. And I think the Bengals kind of being out of the picture for a large portion of the season in the AFC North really helped propel that
Mm-hmm.
Bengals team to not only the top
Agreed.
seed in the AFC North, but to getting even farther. I think that's the Ravens in the Bengals playoff spot, potentially if they don't get injured. I don't think the Bengals really get that far if that doesn't happen. But once again, that's a whole other can of worms. But let's move on. That wraps up the hot takes. We're getting into the most anticipated portion of the show. I'm very excited to put you up to the test,
Mm-hmm.
Dave. We have the Caveman's Quiz Game. If you're not familiar with how the Caveman Quiz Game works, let me break it down for you. So I'm going to ask Dave 5 NFL quiz questions. We got an offseason events question, a stats, a history, draft, and an awards question. Each question is going to be worth point values, 10 points for the easy, 20 points for the medium, and 30 points for the hard. If he gets the question correct, he'll have a follow-up true-false question, which will be worth half of the original point value. And he gets one mulligan per game. So if he gets one wrong, I'll remind him he has a mulligan if he, of course, has a remaining. And then there's one final wager question. If you're familiar with Final Jeopardy, he'll be able to wager a certain amount of points based on how many has, and he'll be fighting to make it on the leaderboard right here. Right now, Sterling is at the top with 105. Charlie's number in second with 100. Matt's at 90. Hansel's at 70, and Jake's got 60. Granted, Matt, Hansel, and Jake got the hardcore version of the quiz before I really revamped it, but they're still up here. And
I
Dave's
gotta beat Hansel so I can go back to the Cover One chat and be like, "Yo, man!" So I don't know Sterling. That's impressive, 105. So I love Sterling. I've known him for a long time. He's a great guy. He's a really smart dude. So I'm not surprised to see him up at the top.
Sterling absolutely knocked it out of the park, and I do expect you to do very, very well here too. So I'm looking forward to seeing the showdown. All right, so we're gonna start with the first question. This is the off-season events question. Do you want the easy, the medium, or the hard?
Let's start in the middle for the first one. Let's go with a medium.
All right, so the medium question is: who was hired to be the head coach of the Miami Dolphins this offseason?
Yeah. So why am I blanking on his name? McDaniel.
I'll give it to you. Yep, it is McDaniel. Mike McDaniel is the head coaching hire for the Miami Dolphins. So that's 20 points on the board. Pretty solid start. The true false question I'll follow it up is going to be this. True or false? He was the defensive coordinator for the 49ers last season.
False.
Correct. He was the offensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers. You're off to a solid start. You got 30 points on the board right away.
Nice.
Sterling's shivering in his boots right now.
No, he's not. No.
It's one start, though. It's one hell of a start. So let's move on to question number 2. This is the statistical question. This could be from, it could be from any era, but I'm not going to be outrageous about it. So do you want the easy, the medium, or the hard?
Statistics are very specific, so I feel like the hard would be really hard. So I'll go with a medium again.
He's going to go with the medium once again. This might be a little bit of a curveball, but what was the most wins a team had last season?
Oh, God, man. Most wins a team had last season. I'm trying to think who the 1 seeds were. 13. I don't know.
You hit it. You hit the nail on the head. It was 13. It was 13. The Packers. Oh, boy, I'm not going to say it. That's part of the next question. But yes, 13 wins is the correct answer. I have, just to give a little bit of a context to how I run this, I've been asking like a group of my friends, like I'll send out a big Google form to gauge how hard or the difficulty of the question. And, 14 was a popular answer. A lot of people were saying 14, but it was right on the mark at 13. But that's another question, right? That's another 20 points on the board. You are up to 50 points if my math does not fail me. The true false for the second stats question is going to be the Packers, the Bucks, and the Chiefs all had 13 wins. True or
false? False.
You're right. Do you know who doesn't have the 13 wins here?
I think it was the Chiefs.
You're right. The Chiefs only had 12 wins. You are correct. Wow, you're perfect so far. You're knocking it out of the park. To 60 points. The Chiefs only had 12 wins. The Packers and the Bucks actually were the only 2 teams with 13 wins last year. So everybody else was 12 teams or 12 wins or less, and the Bills only had 11 after we all thought was going to be a 14, 15 win season.
I had the Bills. My season prediction last year was 13-4, so I was 2 over.
I had them.
Yeah, a lot of people had more than 13 wins, and I was like, it's the NFL, man. 13-4 is strong.
I know 13-4 is strong. It doesn't look it for a team that you'd expect to be, a potential Super Bowl contender, but it really is, especially for how unpredictable things have been as of late. But you're up to 60 points right now. You are killing it. For the next question, we have the history. Do you want to go easy, medium, or the hard here?
Let's keep the good vibes rolling with the medium and stick with it.
All right, he's going to go right back to the strong suit of his game. The medium question is, 8 running backs have surpassed 2,000 yards in a single season in NFL history. Name 3 of them.
All right. Chris Johnson, OJ, and AP.
Correct. That is 3. You just knocked it out of the park once again. That is 3. And for the next question, just to follow it up to keep the ball moving, this isn't really true false, but can you name one more for the extra 10?
Let me go with Derrick Henry.
Derrick Henry is on that list as well. Wow, there you go. That's perfect so far through 3 questions. So that's another 30 points. The medium questions are treating you very well right now, Dave.
My luck's gonna run out eventually. I know.
Hey, if you keep.
What did Sterling have? 105.
Sterling had 105. So you're at 30. You're at 90 points with a mulligan and the wager question left with 2 questions remaining. So you're in a pretty prime.
So if I do a mulligan, will it just go down? Like if I do a mulligan on a medium and get it wrong, will I get to pick the easy one? Is that how it works? Okay. All right. Cool.
All right, so we're going to go on to the draft question. Do you want the easy,
draft?
Medium, or hard?
You know what? I have a mulligan I'm going to go with the hard on the draft question.
All right, I have some confidence you're going to get this one because we had this conversation earlier. But who did the Patriots select at 129 of the 2022 NFL draft that shocked everyone?
Cole Strange.
Cole Strange is the answer. Once I heard you talk about Cole Strange earlier, I'm like, I got to probably change that, but I can't do that.
Hey, I mean, I might not have picked the hard, though. You never know. You didn't know, right?
That is also true, but that's huge for you. You just, actually, that's what, 30 points? I can't remember my own rules, but I think that's 30 points. So there we go. 30 points on the board for the fourth question. The true-false follow-up is going to be, true or false, wide receiver Tyquan Thornton was their third-round selection.
Was he their third or their fourth? That's true. He was their third.
Your first incorrect question.
Was he first?
Tyquan Thornton was their second selection.
Oh, second. Damn it. All right. That's fine. That's fine.
You could use also, just because you haven't lost your mulligan yet, I'll let you at the end of it go ahead and go back and pick a random question, so you don't have to keep shooting for the stars.
Okay.
Back in. I'll be doing that for everybody just to keep it fair. But yes, if you want to hold on to it for the end.
I'll hold on to it.
Okay.
I'm at 120 right now, right? 120 points.
30, 40, 60, 70, 90, 100, 120. Yep. Yeah, you're math.
Nice. All right, cool.
Wow, you are in the lead. It's going to be hard for you to blow this.
Let's
see what happens down the stretch here.
My final wager is probably going to be 0. We'll see.
Hey, I don't blame you. You got the spot. All right, the awards question. What do you want?
Awards,
easy, medium, or hard?
I'm not great with awards. I'll do medium.
All right, going back to what's been doing him well. The medium question for the awards is, who is the last wide receiver to win Offensive Player of the Year?
Oh, wow, that's a good question. The last wide receiver to win Offensive Player of the Year. DeAndre Hopkins?
Incorrect. You actually happened to skip over a certain somebody in 2021. Cooper Kupp was the last wide receiver to win Offensive Player of the Year. Whenever people think of questions like this, I kind of play mental gymnastics.
Well, no, I didn't go too far back, though, in history,
No?
right? I knew it had to be somewhat recent, so I was trying to... I don't even actually know if DeAndre has ever won Offensive Player of the Year. But
I don't think so, to be honest.
All right.
It's really a running back, quarterback dominated award. Wide receivers really haven't won it much at all.
Got it. All right. So what's the deal? I got a mulligan, right? And
yep. Do you want to use it here?
So can I use it on any category, or do I have to use it on? On awards?
You can use it on any category.
All right. I will do. All right. So give me a mulligan for the draft.
All right, just going to go back to the draft. So you took the hard one. Do you want the medium or the easy question?
I'll do the medium.
All right, sticking to his guns. The medium question is, in their respective draft classes, who was selected higher, Aaron Rodgers or Brett Favre?
Higher, Aaron Rodgers.
Correct. Aaron Rodgers was drafted higher. It's another 20 points due to the mulligan. The true-false is going to be, Brett Favre was a first-round pick. True or false? All right, not a hesitation in his eye. One hell of a run from Dave. Brett Favre was drafted in the second round of the draft. I think it was pick 34.
Yeah.
Rodgers was 24, I
think. Rodgers was in the mid-20s. I can't remember exactly. I think it was like 24, 25. Yeah.
Yep. You've killed it, man. You absolutely decimated the quiz game. I might have to up the ante a little bit on the next poor fella that steps in here. But all right, so we have the wager question. Do you want to really run up the score?
Well, what's my total at right now? I'm at like 150 or so, somewhere around there.
Count again. 30, 60, 70, 90, 100, 120, 150 you're at.
That's a really nice number. I'll go 0 just because I think 150 is a nice number.
All right,
but I still want the question, obviously.
You're definitely going to get it. So for 0 points, playing it safe, as I fully respect, who was the most sacked quarterback last season?
Wow, who was the most sacked quarterback in the NFL last season? Joe Burrow?
Correct. You didn't overthink it at all. Joe Burrow was the most sacked quarterback in the NFL.
Dang, I could have had 300 points. Oh, well.
Oh, yeah, you could have put it all on the line right there for Joe Burrow, but you played it safe, and I fully respect that. But Joe Burrow is the answer. You sacked 51
I'm happy with my performance in the quiz game.
I'd
I'm a
like to
little
think
bummed
so.
I didn't get the Cooper Cup question, but I think I got all the I got one of the true false questions wrong, I think, as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, you did. But
But that's
that's all right.
okay.
I mean, you
That's
killed it.
okay. That's
You
okay.
get to go back to Hansel now and talk a lot of shit. I told Hansel because I at that time didn't have the whole thing smoothed out yet. So I told him that you'll be getting another shot once your spot gets taken, because he was number one as well at one point. But now obviously you are, Dave. So congratulations, you're number one
Thanks,
on the
man.
leaderboard. I'll be putting a compilation together of your big win and put it up on Twitter tomorrow. I'll be sure to tag Hansel and make sure to rub it in his face. I'll be sure to throw Sterling in there as well, just so everybody knows of your big victory. But anyway,
Appreciate that.
Dave, thank you, man, for coming on and spending some time with me tonight. It's been a really good time.
Dude, this has been awesome. It's fun to go kind of around the NFL. Obviously, on the air raid hour, we really dive deep into the Bills. So it's kind of fun to kind of take a walk around the NFL in the middle of the summer. So appreciate you having me, man. It was an absolute pleasure. It was awesome.
Of course, yeah. I'm so glad you had a good time. And to anybody that stepped into the comment section to say hello, I really appreciate you guys sticking around, liking, subscribing, showing any kind of support that you guys always do. It's really a motivating thing for not only myself, but I'm sure Dave, all of Cover One, and any content creator out there. It really means the world to us. And Dave, why don't you let everybody know where they can find you?
Yeah, so mostly I'm on Twitter at Tilt Money is my handle right down there in the screen. And Steve Judge, obviously, he runs our Air Raid Hour account on Twitter. He's always on there doing polls and putting graphics. And it's at the Bills Guys on Twitter. And then obviously our show is on the Cover One Sports Network. We are on the Cover One YouTube page. Go subscribe there. During the season, the Air Raid Hour will be doing live pregame before every Bills game and our normal Monday 9 p.m. slots, which usually is game reaction day, but we know the Bills schedule is a little all over the place this year. So sometimes it's going to be game reaction day. Sometimes it might be pregame on Monday. So anyway, we'll be doing pregames every game and Mondays at 9 on Cover One. So come join us there. Love talking like you do with the comments section. It's great.
Oh, yeah. Engaging with the comment section is the best part of the whole thing, man. I think we can both agree on that for sure.
Yeah.
Joey, thank you for stopping in. Kim, Jason, anybody that popped in tonight, really appreciate it. Dave, thank you. And I'll see you guys later. See you on the next show. Go Bills.
Go Bills.